The mysteries behind PSTM&M have just been discovered. Throughout the past few months, Minitoon has published a ton of teasers about a company from the past, before the infection started. This company is called Protection Services Through Mechanics and Machines, or PSTM&M for short, and they are focusing on robots. We haven't seen many of these robots throughout the franchise itself, but the ones we did gave us a lot of information about what was happening at this company, and I think it's really important to start diving deep into the PSTM&M, because we barely know anything about them, and whenever Minitoon introduces a new plot to the story, it usually affects the rest of the franchise. For example, you could ask, why did Minitoon create Theo? The answer will be because of the insolence, this all-powerful cult that came out of nowhere, and this changed the storyline so much after it was revealed. So the same could be applied to this company that we keep seeing everywhere. Why did Minitoon create the PSTM&M? Believe it or not, we still don't have an exact answer, but I think I've found it. Alright, so to start, I want to take a look at the people from PSTM&M. Who are they? What were their roles? And where are they now? This is what we need to know. First we have Mudson, the CEO of PSTM&M and the one that was in charge of everything. Not a great guy to say the least, because he kept harassing his employees that were critical of him and the company, such as Ryder Page, who used to be the tech consultant at the company, and Harry, who was an editor for Mudson's failed response video. We also have Kona Clip. Yes, this Kona right here. He used to be an employee at PSTM&M alongside with Eddie, both of them now no longer having any association with PSTM&M, besides the fact that they've kept robots that they've built during their time there, and they're using them now as security robots. We will need to keep in mind all these people for what's coming later in the video. However, there is something else to keep in mind, and that is that Mudson does not really seem to care that much about his people. He has threatened, harassed, and even started arguing with many of his employees, all because of one reason: PSTM&M, the company, his robots. Minitoon has made it very clear that Mudson only admires and respects the robots, but when it comes to employees, he couldn't care less, as seen with Ryder Page and Harry. It looks like there was a divide in the company between Mudson along with his loyal employees that only cared about the robots, and the employees that thought they weren't treated right, that Mudson was abusing his power. And they were right. Mudson only wanted to develop better and better technology, more robots, but for an unknown reason. If I had to guess on why Mudson was like this, it is because he was probably rushed, not by his own employees, but by time and investors. We know the same happened to Mr.P when he started developing a cure for his sick wife. Thanks to Season 1's journal entry, Mr.P writes how he has been manipulated and controlled by Theo all this time. Theo was the one that rushed Mr.P. If Theo would have not been in Mr.P's mind, that cure could have maybe worked. The infection would have never started. The cause of all of this is time. Everyone was rushed to develop a cure really fast because Mr.P told them, because someone was controlling him, and we could assume that the same has happened with Mudson long before the infection, but this time it may or may not even be Theo, because in the Regarding the Rumors video, we can see multiple important people giving positive feedback about PSTM&M, such as a millionaire, an investor, and even a scientist. These people might have just been paid by Mudson to go on camera and say good things about the company, but in their eyes, these robots could have been the future. They could have made millions from Mudson's company, and all they had to do is invest in PSTM&M and make sure that they are the first company to create working robots. And if Mudson would have refused to hurry and not rush the employees, all these rich people could have just threatened to withdraw and stop investing in the company, something that Mudson probably knew that it would be a catastrophe. because as Ryder Page himself said during his time at the PSTM&M,
our electricity bill shoots through the roof every month as we require so much energy to keep this production alive. With how much money we spend, we need to make sure we are getting our worth.
they are already spending too much money on everything. The production requires way too much, so investors are most likely Mudson's secret way of keeping the company running. However, let's take a look at the main theory. Robot domination. Mudson's secret plan. This already sounds far too stretched, but it's Piggy. We have magical creatures, a zombie infection, and even talking potatoes, so really, anything can happen. We already know that PSTM&M exists to create robots and grow technology, but we don't have an exact answer to why. Until we take a look at this picture. It was posted by the I2R X account talking about their achievements. However, many people are ignoring what can be seen inside the picture. Of course, we have many other robots in the background, not too scary. But when we look in the middle, we can see Ryder Page along with... wait, who's that? I've heard tons of theories saying that's Ryder's mother or father, a relative, but we already know who that is. Or should I say, what that is? Because if we look at the Hello Employee tape, we will see Ryder. You can see that this is the same Ryder Page because of the eyes and because of his white fur on his face. The shape matches perfectly. However, if we skip to the end of the tape, right here, where everyone believed that Ryder Page has been turned into a robot, you will notice something. Look at his white fur shape. I actually had to draw this in order for you guys to understand, but as you can see, this is not Ryder. The shape is much more different. However, we can see that the other Ryder from this picture has the exact shape and eyes as the one from the Hello Employee tape, meaning that the theory of Ryder being turned into a robot was false. Ryder simply left the company, but now PSTM&M has a robot version of him. They tried to replicate how Ryder looks, and in a way, they've kind of done it because his robot version looks really similar to him. But now the question is, why? Well, everything is now connected. Mudson does not care about his employees because he doesn't even want employees. He wants to have a company that's being run by robots to create more robots. This could also be a plan to reduce spending so much money, because if you have employees working for you, you will need to pay them monthly. Not only that, but critical employees such as Ryder and Harry might start a divide within the company, and as Benjamin once said, they could file a lawsuit at any time if they really felt like their lives are being threatened. However, if you fully get rid of employees and replace all of them with robots, Mudson won't need to pay them anymore. They're robots, they don't need to be paid. They will also never get tired. The workforce becomes unstoppable. Not only that, but if you have robots, you don't need to spend any money on food for all the employees anymore, and they will also never complain about anything. No lawsuits, no arguing, just a quiet factory working non-stop. This was Mudson's plan. Replace everyone with robots in order to create better and faster robots that will not only take all the roles from the PSTM&M, but also from outside the company. And we can see that this was already kind of happening. In the Hello Employee and regarding the rumors tapes, we can see robots that are already doing the employees' jobs. They are chefs making and serving food, they carry heavy boxes around, they talk with employees, and more recently, outside the company, they were used for security, instead of hiring actual people. We can see that in the mall chapter and in Eddie's mansion. These places were in no need for an actual guard, because they were using robots as security. All of these robots were created by PSTM&M employees, Kona and Eddie, when they used to work there. Another question that always comes up in my mind is about Kona and Eddie. How was their experience working at the PSTM&M, and most importantly, how did they stop working? Because if my theory is right, That would mean that Mudson has also fired Kona and Eddie after the PSTMM has found out how to make smarter and more intelligent robots. Not only that, but if Mudson fired them, that would also mean that PSTMM at the time had robot versions of Kona and Eddie, which again wouldn't surprise me at all because we already know that after Ryder Page left the company, they created a robot version of him. Mudson's plan was to take the employees' knowledge and put it in the robots. That way, he could fire everyone and then let the robots create other robots. And in the end, to maybe be the best robot company in the world and make robots the primary source for food, security, and many other roles. And all of this is just the top of the iceberg, because we have many more companies that appeared along with PSTMM, but we don't know much about those, such as Netix, who is presumably a video game company, most probably owned by Ronald, an employee that used to work at PSTMM. And if my theory is right, Ronald could have gotten fired by Mudson, but instead of giving up, Ronald has continued his passion and created his own company in order to compete with PSTMM. And let's not forget about Cybers. In another tape that Minitune only posted on X called Z Lost Cassette, we can find hidden words that when you mix together, you get the word Cybers. Now, Cybers was never mentioned throughout the franchise itself. However, the word Cybers has appeared in a fan-made game not so long ago. I'm sure most of you have heard of Piggy the Lost Book. They were supposed to do a giant collaboration with Piggy, but in the end, the developers from that fan game joined up with Minitune and created I2R, Pig64, and another project that nobody knows about yet. And inside Piggy the Lost Book in chapter 1, we can find a giant poster that reads, Cybers Inc. The future is now, diverse and functional. Once again, I need to remind you all that Piggy the Lost Book is not an official nor a canon game. However, the word Cybers is mentioned in here, and some characters from the Lost Book such as Diego, which was the bot for the Lost Book Chapter 1, has now been introduced in the Piggy franchise as an employee of PSTMM. We can see his name right here on these report logs from the Regarding the Rumors video. So some elements from the Lost Book have been introduced inside the Piggy franchise itself, and seeing a giant poster with the word Cybers does make you question what type of company this is. Because if the entire poster from the Lost Book is still accurate, that would mean that Cybers is another type of robotics company, a competitor to PSTMM. And who do you think could be the CEO of this company? Well, I suspect no other than Ryder Page. Because this word appears in the Z Lost cassette tape, where Mudson and Benjamin start talking about what they should do now that Ryder left the company. So just imagine if Ryder wanted to take his revenge so bad that he alone as a professional tech consultant has created a robot company to compete and outnumber the sales of PSTMM. This could be really likely because we already know that sometimes in the future, Mudson disappears and the PSTMM company goes bankrupt, thanks to this note wrote by Mr.P, where he also says that he has taken over in order to help revive the company. So in the end, Mudson's plan failed. We still don't know the exact motives, but I think this theory reveals much of them. We will need to see what happens in the future to find out what happened with Mudson and where the PSTMM has gone to. Cybers and Netix might have just won the so-called war against the PSTMM. But this is just a piggy theory. Let me know in the comments below what do you think about all of this and what are your theories about the PSTMM. And I'm going to see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.